Hello and welcome to the April 6th edition of the Cluster API Provider AWS Office Hours, a subproject of both SIG Cluster Lifecycle and the Cluster API project. Just a reminder, this meeting is recorded and will be posted up to YouTube after we are finished, and that we abide by all of the Kubernetes community guidelines. So in general, please be excellent to one another. If you are attending live, please go ahead and add yourself to the attending list on the agenda and notes document. And if you have anything to add, please go ahead and add it to the agenda as well. To start with, I did want to let everybody know that we have, since our last meeting, version 0.5.2 was released, mostly bug fixes. So if you are having any issues with 0.5.1 or before, update to 0.5.2 and hopefully it'll solve your issues. And I don't see any demos for today, so we can move into the group topics. And the first one is Nadir with multi-tenancy.
Yeah, hi. So probably follows on from a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about how to support multiple AWS accounts using a single instance of the Cluster API AWS controller. Today you can, and how do you support role assumption? So technically role assumption is supported in Kappa, but the way you have to wire that up is extremely complicated for normal everyday use. So it's basically want to change that. So Andrew may have opened up a PR to add IAM role field to the cluster. We, from VMware side, we basically want to initially put that into a secret because of some of the concerns that came from our security organization, and also open up the possibility to support different types of credentials. So basically the idea around this is we would have a secret reference, and there would be different types of secrets which correspond to the different ways you can wire up a credential for AWS. So that could be static credentials, it could be an IAM role assumption, it could even be using OIDC. So from Kubernetes 1.16, you can use projected account service volume projected service account token volumes, and you can exchange that JOT directly with AWS in return for some AWS credentials. So that's a feature that is available in EKS, for example. Apart from the side they're not on 1.16 yet. So yes, so it's about giving the flexibility, being able to support caching. So you don't want, if you're managing lots of clusters, you don't want the STS, the assume role, being called constantly. So we did some stuff in V1 Alpha 2 to do that. So we need to preserve that type of behavior, and just to ensure we've got as much flexibility as possible. And I'm also planning to do a very similar proposal for the vSphere provider. So it's a Google Doc, it's open for comments, and we'll need to sync up with Andrew. Yeah, I just hope it's okay.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Nadir. Any questions on that?
We'll take a look this week, but from what I can see so far, it looks great, Nadir. Thanks.
No problems.
All right. Any other group topics for today? All right, jump into the backlog then. Let's see, do we have anything without any milestone attached right now? And we do. We have support multi-Z with default AWS cluster configuration. I know Ben had started working on this, and there's some trickiness around making sure that we don't break existing users. So for now, I'm going to just bump this into next. All right. Support selection and limiting of private subnets to use for control plane replicas. All right. I think this is probably some that we want to address soonish. So I'll put in 0.5.x. These next two, default resync period of 10 minutes actually appears to be 20 minutes, and AWS machine controller sometimes appears to be reading stale cached cluster data. These ones have been pretty tricky to replicate. So if anybody has seen these and has a way to kind of replicate these on demand, that would be great. Otherwise, I'll continue digging in and see what I can do to replicate them.
Do we have any idea what it might be? Is there any guess?
Not really. We've seen it more around the move workflow. So I'm wondering if it might be related to some of the issues, like some of the intermittent issues we've seen with etcd latency, but I don't know. It's been difficult to try to get a, reproducer for it where we actually have enough logging data to really tell anything.
Fair enough.
Next one, improve validation around fields that are passed in as AWS API parameters. Let's see. Yes, this is definitely something that we want. However, I don't know. I think it's relatively longer term on the priority list right now. And I'll probably put this in next just for now until we have more feedback on it.
Help wanted?
Yeah, definitely help wanted. And it would be great if anybody has time to add in additional details and we can move it to like a good first issue.
I think we need to do it for Cappy as well. I suspect we've chosen the wrong error type to return and it displays incorrectly or something, amongst other things.
Yeah, I think this one was, some of it's tricky because I think the idea is to try to do admission webhooks around some of the fields that we're passing in as parameters to the AWS calls. So that you get more immediate feedback that like you used an invalid character in the SSH key name in this example.
Oh yeah, this is the one where AWS don't document that you can't do it. Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah, because this one didn't even align with the AWS docs around the type accepted. And let's see, failed to create cluster cuddle inventory CRDs component. This was around running on a cluster that was version 115. So I think that upstream cluster API fixes in. We can go ahead and close this. Qt and Bootstrap controller crashes when passed key material via the file field. This was an issue Scott turned up with trying to stand up an external etcd cluster.
I might have slightly misled Scott into how to use external etcd. I mean, it's probably a valid NPE, but also documentation.
Yeah. So let me go ahead and add a documentation kind in there as well. All right. And now it should disappear soon as the or did I mess up the milestone? I'll do it. All right. Clear that out. See if anything hasn't been labeled properly. All right, everything's labeled. One of the things that I probably should also bring up is that for the core cluster API project, they're looking at potentially trying to make the next release a non-API breaking change release and try to have at least a period where we're adding features without introducing breaking changes to the API, at least for a short while, and we'll probably follow suit as well. So I'll try to do a little bit of milestone cleanup. Like right now we have a 0.6.0 milestone. I may try to introduce something in the way of a different milestone in there to track some feature improvements that we'd like to land that are non-API breaking changes as well. And if anybody wants to take a look and suggest anything for any of those milestones, please feel free to raise those and do that as well. But I think that's all I have. So if there isn't anything else, I think we can go ahead and wrap it up for the day. Any other questions, comments, concerns, or anything? All right. Thank you all, and see you in 2 more weeks.
So yeah.